Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to the Q&A panel for the online sexual exploitation of children. Looks like we've had quite a few of you tuning into the video, and now we're here for a live Q&A session. I'm Catherine Welch, and with Project Relentless, and I'm broadcasting from Berlin, actually. On our panel today, we have Boom Mosby in Bangkok, and Sela Samleng from Cambodia, and Sam Inocencio. I think I probably butchered your name there, but Sam is with IJM in the Philippines, and you've all gotten to know their work through the video. So now we're going to go to the question and answers. Just so you know that there is a question and answer portion on the WOVA app. And so there's quite a few questions being posted there. You can continue to post your questions. I don't think we're going to get to all of them. And just to note, some of the questions are a little bit technical, and we probably will allow the speakers to get back to their technical people and to be able to answer those adequately for you. And also, we want to try to make these questions as appropriate as possible for the widest, broadest majority of the participants in the audience today. So just so you know, if your question isn't answered and you've posted it on the app, then it will be answered by our panelists eventually. So I just want to say, first of all, that you guys are doing fantastic work, all of you. This is indeed very difficult work, but it's needed now more than ever, because I've seen the stats of the global exponential rise of online sexual exploitation of children everywhere in the world. And I'm sure Asia is just like that. And you have mentioned that a little bit in your talks already, that this is with the shutdown and kids being less supervised and more access online, that there's been a great increase in the online sexual exploitation. So I'm gonna start out with a question. And so there's a couple of interesting questions here. And so one of the questions I'm gonna start with is, and I'll let you guys decide who wants to take this first. We have what is your main goal? Is it to remove platforms and users and remove the uploading or prevent the uploading and viewing? Or is your goal in your work is to stop the perpetrators from creating material in the first place? Do you have similar approaches in this, or different approaches among the work that you do? Boom, you want to take this? Start off with the answer?
Well, I want to go first for this.
Sure, great.
Sure. So as you know, we've been running the internet hotline to actually receive public reports for child sexual abuse materials. So we have noticed that the number of reports has been increasing, especially during the time of COVID. I think the main obstacle for us is actually the taking down of those images from the internet, especially when it comes to the image that is very difficult to determine whether it's legal or illegal. It's very gray. Then it would be difficult to actually ask the country that is believed to be hosting the image to take it down. Also, in some cases, it's also very difficult to get to the industry, the ISP or the web hoster or the website owner, to understand that the images themselves sort of harmful, to some extent illegal, for taking down. So it's a sort of back and forth communication and conversation and arguments and negotiation between people like us as a hotline analyst and the people who are actually responsible for hosting this content.
Yeah, it sounds like it's a little bit of both, right?
Yeah.
Anyone have anything else to add to that question?
I can answer, Catherine. Well, as you can imagine, Osec is a very complex crime and it needs to be addressed on various fronts. Clearly, taking down materials is important because, again, these images are perpetuated there and exchanged in the web. And we would love for governments and organizations to find ways, including tech companies, to be able to take down those materials. But it is also very clear, even as we speak, that children are actually being abused or exploited online, either through live streaming or creation of new materials. So there is definitely a clear urgency to ensure that the exploitation stops. So we are going to rescue them, ensure that the production of new materials stops, and that law enforcement are engaged in investigating. Our social workers are collaborating with our criminal justice system to ensure that we're able to rescue those children now so that the exploitation and abuse stops.
Anything, Boom?
Okay, yeah. I think from me, I just see it could be like Sam said, it's very complex and it could be overwhelming, you know, because you are talking about millions and millions of files, you know, like billions. And so basically, I think we'll try to work with ESP as much as we can so that they're built in, you know, the safety within that platform, which is very difficult from what we find. You know, we may have like very good engage with Facebook or Twitter like that, but there's so other many ESP that do not respond well and that they don't even want to remove child pornography off their, you know, website. Yeah.
Right. Can I just add that to the point where Sam mentioned about the urgency and the time frame? I think responding to images online is very important that we understand the time frame and the urgency of those images being on the internet. So every time the image is abused and the victim is being re-victimized every minute, right? So as a hotline, we really want that the image is actually taken down quickly as soon as it's reported. So I think the understanding of the industry of how urgent it is to take down is a critical point. And as well as for law enforcement to actually to put some pressures over some sort of industry response as well. It should not be just totally relying on industry themselves, website owner or ISP, just to be freely taking actions.
Great. Okay. Yeah, you know, you guys are taking a particular approach, and the OSEC is a huge problem. It's going to require many different prongs of approaches, and you've taken a very important law enforcement and online approach to this. So, but what is your sense of what is your sense of awareness, and sort of if you could recommend, I mean, not every organization can do everything, but if an organization wanted to start at the grassroots level, if an organization wanted to start at the community level to raise awareness and to start preventing OSEC, what would, you know, could you explore a little bit about what that would look like?
Okay. I can go first. For example, what we did in the north of Thailand, from Thailand, what we can see that international school are doing really good with installing internet filter in school. As you see, but like we work a lot with the Thai school because what we recover that Thai school do not have internet filter. So which means that teachers and children and students can have access to child pornography and pornography website while they're using school internet. So our example, what we did is we signed MOU with the school, like the local community school, and we work. So when they sign MOU with us, they need to allow us to install internet filter in their school. They need to allow us to train the students and train the teachers. So that, because we still see that prevention is the key, you know, we want to, and then we give them the signs that internet safety school. And what we look at the shocking number we look at the Thai school just started open like the first week of July, and we review of the first week before the school start. There was one school that our system has blocked over 5,000 websites in 1 week. You know, so that the stats is quite shocking. So that those are something that we working, and we gather the information that we will bring it to the Ministry of Education, and these to be enforced, you know, across the country.
Yeah, I'd like to follow up on that, and because I know all of you have a little bit similar programs, but it seems to me that there's, okay, that's in the school and that's great, but what about an awareness of what exactly is pornography? It's kind of like a good touch, bad touch for online, and how, you know, how do kids know what's appropriate and what's not? It seems to me that there's it's not just in Southeast Asia countries, but it's all over the world that there's a graying sense of what actually is appropriate to do online or to view online or to allow yourself to show of yourself online. And also that's in schools, but what about also at homes or in other communities when you're doing that? But so I just, you know, it's always moving back upstream, and what's your vision for moving more and more upstream to actually saying, okay, it's kind of like don't look at pornography, but is there a sense, what's the awareness of what actually defines pornography? You know, how do we know if we're doing that or not? We can't look at that, or we can look at that. So that's my question. You know, if we're really going to stop this, we have to get really deep.
Yeah.
So can we?
So I can add to that. We do, you know, like I think before, you know, before the internet is bloom, we teach them about, like you said, good touch, bad touch, confusing touch. Now we need to teach them about what is online grooming. You know, like you said, what's appropriate, not appropriate. Like you said, they don't need to be naked to be child pornography.
Right, exactly.
It could be nude photo, and then when you have some pedophile who like that, and then there's so many that they know that child pornography is illegal, they can't post anything on the ESP platform. So what they do is they just use cute kids photo, but how they comment is they use it, you know, for sexual pleasure. So that's why I think for us, we're trying to, it's so hard to, you know, go home by home, right, to do the training, or school by school. So we work with law enforcement like TICAC when they can target a lot on their Facebook page. So we're trying to update, because our team work firsthand with the victims. So we're trying to update. There's so many, how we call, like modus operandi, or the strategies that offenders use. They're so complicated, they're so complex. And those strategies need to be updated all the time. There's new strategy all the time that we see, you know, like you said, it's so complex. So it's important that we can target as much audience as we can.
Yeah.
Yeah, can I just add to that as well? So from what we have seen, and also based on our study, the criminal justice system, or our public justice system, does not operate in a vacuum. It does require this collaboration and support from the community, whether that's coming from local government units, or local people's organizations, churches, NGOs, civil society organizations, that actually understands the nuances of the issue, and also have a great understanding of how to also report the crime, what are the processes, the flow charts in that regard, to ensure that they are eventually connected to the criminal justice system framework that can actually respond to what's going on the ground in their communities. So I'd like also to just discuss a little bit about, you know, two things, two tracks that we're seeing in the Philippines. One is Osec that we defined earlier in terms of live streaming abuse of children, or production of new materials, where we're looking at very young children here, even prepubescent. You know, some are not even school age, and so the type of education and awareness raising should definitely be nuanced to that type of crime. And so we wanted to ensure and clarify that this is clearly a trafficking crime where there are facilitators or traffickers, and unfortunately there are moms or dads or uncles who have this influence over the children, and then even some, because of the familial relationship, actually these kids submit to that type of influence with their family or with their parents. The other thing there is online safety for children as well. That of course includes discussion on what's pornography or pornographic materials. How can they protect themselves from online grooming, etc. So a good understanding of that is definitely recommended to our local communities, organizations, so that they're able to communicate that, and that proper interventions would be provided to those specific types of crimes.
Mhm.
Keela, anything to add?
Well, in addition to Booms and Sam, I also agree that education or raising awareness is crucial when it comes to preventing the online abuse in the first place. But I would say that education or raising awareness has to take place in school, communities, and as well as the family. Parents need to be educated as well to actually keep their children safe online. But also for children, I think they need to be educated on possibly how to identify risk behind their online world. So for example, what information to post, what information not to post, what kind of photograph they should post. And also for young people, it would be very useful to be educated on what they can post, like what kind of photograph they can post, because some of these young people can become offenders themselves without knowing that some of the material they are sharing online are actually illegal, like sharing pornographic material or posting something that would be considered as pornographic images of children. But also, I believe that healthy communication within families, I think between parent and their own children, is also very important. That parents have to be educated on how to talk about online risk and online protections to their children. And of course, offer a positive environment where they can come to ask for help, right? When they actually encounter any problems or danger online. I think from some of the examples that we've been doing here, like for example, the Safer Internet Day that is celebrated every year, we are engaging with a lot of children and young people, basically to actually to talk about internet safety and for young people to actually express themselves what kind of internet environment that should be safe and what they can do to actually help the internet to be safer for other children to use. And this is sort of awareness and education that should be actually touched on and promoted.
Yeah. So now this is, of course, these are all good plans. Would you say that there's a huge need and perhaps lots of room for other organizations to come in on that grassroots community level to really address this lack of awareness? Because it's great. Yes, parents and families need to be aware of what's appropriate, what's not appropriate, that this is actually, when you post this is illegal. Parents need to educate their children, but a lot of parents, even globally, do not understand they don't understand the tech as well as the children. And so I guess my first question would be, is there any kind of curriculum that you're aware of, maybe that you're using, but could use maybe some other group could come in and take this other approach? And is there materials out there available, or do people need to come up with their own? Or if you've got materials, would you be willing to share that with people in the audience who want to now perhaps switch a focus to working on online, since it's increasing online in these last few months?
first? So as for prevention, again, like as I say, we have curriculum, we do share PowerPoints with all our partners. However, our PowerPoints update monthly or sometimes weekly. It's depend because we need to follow the trends of the strategies where, you know, an offender is using to attract, you know, or abuse kids. Like for example, in Thailand last week, the last month, the trend was to abuse people within the family and post them online. Yeah, so sharing like that. So those are something that needs to be updated all the time. But you know, like you can email our team. We have Thai, we have a Catholic nun that emailed us, and we do share, you know, that with them, and we also send team out to help if we can, yeah, for training. So yeah, this is something that it's you know, it's important for us to help with prevention.
Okay, I just want to make a note here that I am actually seeing in the chat box that there's comments and questions, and hopefully we can get to everything, but there's Asian Youth Against Porn, people have posted and things like that. But it seems to me that, yes, there's trends, but it's just a general awareness that among parents and families and children, a general awareness of that you just can't trust anyone online, and all these specific recruitment techniques, it's always playing catch up. But I'm sure, you know, these websites that I'm seeing and other materials that that there needs to be, would you agree that the general awareness is still quite low in the general population in areas where you work?
Well, I can speak for the Philippines. I can say that there's been an increasing awareness about the issue. We've used a lot of media coverages, you know, for those type of cases to reach as much number of audience, you know, across the Philippines and even around the world. I think that's definitely an important medium that we can use. Of course, we can use social media platforms. You know, everyone's on social media, and we can again use that platform to ensure that we are raising awareness about the issue, having a good understanding of the nuances of the crime. What are the, you know, reporting mechanisms that are available for them if they're able to spot a suspected Osec you know, case in their community? Because I do think that it is important for the community to understand that while they're increasing, you know, they're having a greater understanding of the issue, they would be able to spot what are some of those issues or cases happening in their community. And probably their question is now what, right? And so I think it is important for them to also understand that there, you know, that there is a response coming from, or that is available from the government, from our police. And so they should report that, so that those criminal activities will be disrupted, and that children will be rescued and suspects will be arrested. And that increases kind of like the confidence of the community that actually there is this bigger, you know, team that's working on the issue, and that it's not just about understanding, but they're also participating in ending this crime.
Exactly, and it's getting that message out. Know what you're looking at and knowing what to do about it and how to refer and report to the, that's fantastic. Anyone else want to comment on that?
I think there are plenty of resources developed in different languages in different countries that we can tap into. But also it's very important to actually understand the context that we're working in, because some resources that are developed do not actually fit all the context. So it's very important for you when coming to developing resources for education, we have to understand the context and the situation and who we're talking to. So I can speak for Cambodia, for example. We develop sort of resources for education and raising public awareness about online safety. And we also provide online courses to children, parents, and professionals in different kind of languages. so that people can actually go to take online courses themselves at their own speed, at their own time. And we find it's a very a good platform because, sometimes people are not invited to an appropriate awareness raising session, but they can just actually go online and find all these resources themselves, and they can take courses at their own time. That's one thing. The other thing, I think, some private companies such as the big one, Facebook, has also produced a lot of resources for learning, and they put it available on their platform. So people should actually go to a website of some important company like Facebook, Google, to find all these resources for learning. But I also agree it's also now important from moving from knowledge and understanding to action, because I think people who've been educated should also be able to actually disseminate the knowledge further to their peer or community peoples or maybe classmates or something like that. But also these people need to be empowered to take action when it comes to preventing, for example, monitoring the situation around them, or reporting a concern about somebody being in danger online. And that's a culture that needs to be promoted in school or community, actually, to report abuse or help each other when there's a danger online.
Yep, absolutely. Boom, anything on that?
Like I would add, like different countries is different context, and cultural is different strategies. Yeah, again, like even though we do produce a lot of prevention, but more for the Hub project side, we've been working more with law enforcement, developing handbooks and stuff for those children who are already victims, because they are very limited sources. Like now we've been working on this, even for online. It's new, it's new for Thailand, for, Asia, and we're trying to also develop and translate into English. So basically, I would just say that our curriculum, our lesson and handbooks is more for law enforcement and victims than, but we do have some prevention program as well. So, but not as comprehensive as what we do for victims.
No, that's great. Sorry to interrupt, but that's great, because you guys are doing what you're doing, and you're specializing in that high level, the internet, law enforcement, but there's lots of room, and there's lots of materials that I see people posting in the chat box that there's lots of opportunities, there's lots of materials, and local organizations, even communities, can look at what's available and adapt it for their particular situation, whether it's urban or rural or a small government school or an international school. And there's all kinds of things that are already being developed, but just probably need to be tweaked and adapted for their particular context and culture. Yeah, so that's brilliant. And I really want to thank the community out there who's listening and posting all kinds of great stuff, because that's what's great about these conferences. So we talked about, I actually, there's another question about, it's pretty shocking. This is particularly for Sam, about to learn that many of the perpetrators in the Philippines are the family members. And what are particular approaches to that, as far as is there a particular approach that you can recommend? Because that's something particular to the Philippines, where in Thailand it's mostly the foreigners, and but as far as addressing prevention and stopping trafficking when it's family members doing the perpetrating, do you have any comments or suggestions about how to make that approach for preventing this generational cycle of abuse?
Yes. Again, based off on our study, the Osec study, we found that majority of the traffickers or perpetrators located in the Philippines are unfortunately the moms, the dads, uncles. So they're definitely connected in terms of the relationship with the victims, and so that is very unfortunate. And so we would love actually to understand a little bit more about, some of kind of like the motivations behind, those things. Why would moms or dads be, able to do that to their kids? Actually, that's even mind-boggling for me. One who has worked with this type of child sexual exploitation over the years. It's still very, very mind-boggling for me to see that. And it impacts our team a whole lot, and of course our partners. But one thing that is very important, as we've seen in our experience and study, these type of crimes, especially financially motivated crimes as OSEC, they respond to law enforcement approach. Okay, so the this is definitely poverty is a push factor, but poverty is not in itself the factor, because someone in the Philippines doesn't need to be poor to decide to abuse or exploit a child in OSEC, but rather this lucrative nature of the crime due to the economic disparity between the trafficker in the Philippines, which is easy money for them, and they think they can get away with it, and the sex offenders across the globe willing and able to pay for the abuse, right? But we've seen traffickers, moms, dads who have decent jobs, multiple cell phones, flat screen TVs. But ultimately, what we have seen time and time again is that people are less likely to commit crimes, especially financially motivated crimes as OSEC, if they think that there is a high risk that they will get caught. Meaning to say, they understand the real consequence of committing the crime, which is life-altering for them, like life imprisonment. So when you replace impunity with accountability, you protect more children from violence. And so I think every country should have a strong, well-functioning justice system and a supportive environment, just like what we're talking, having a great understanding of the issue, the nuances of the issue, spreading the word about the impact of OSEC to very young children, especially the trauma that they're experiencing, how the parents can actually support their kids. And so I think, combining all of those, that would definitely deter this type of crime.
Yeah, I'm gonna just jump in here, and I don't doubt, what you say is true, that deterrence is working. I just think it's sad that the risk of getting caught and going to jail and paying large fines is worth more than harming their children. And that it's that disconnect of, I'm not going to do it because I'm going to get in trouble. Rather, I'm not going to do it because this is actually harming my child or my niece or my nephew. And I wonder, hopefully we can find a solution to get the motivation back to the humanity side and not to the economic justice side. I hope that we can get there someday. Yeah.
That's why, Catherine, I'm actually quite encouraged by the recommendation of the study, that there is so much more that we have to understand about OSEC.
Yeah,
And of course, that are happening in the Philippines with parents, what are their motivations? A key recommendation there in the OSEC study is for our research community, actually our organizations, to be able to go deep into that. What are these motivations and what are the societal behaviors that need to change, right? But also at the same time, we're definitely working with the criminal justice system response, because as you've said, we've seen deterrence of that crime, even in other types of financially motivated crimes in bars and streets, where we've seen dramatic reduction in the prevalence of the crime because of the deterrent impact of a sustained law enforcement response.
Yeah. Any Sila or Boom, have anything to add on this aspect of motivation or deterrence, something like that?
Well, we did not see any situation like that in the Philippines yet, in Cambodia, but I think the experience from the Philippines is quite worthwhile to learn and reflect in a situation, especially when we do education and training for the criminal justice sector, the industry, and that's the kind of lesson learned from other countries. So for me, that's important. And also getting back to the education side or the research community, I believe that sort of like a research or analysis of the regional trends. You know, what we see in this country might be happening in the other country in the region. So it would be very crucial for the region to have some sort of similar understanding, you know, and because, you know, Osec is an evolving problem. It's advancing every day. And a country cannot be lagging too far behind another country, because otherwise that country will be most vulnerable. And exploitation will be actually being directed to that country. So it's important that we learn from each other, we share our experience, and we share what we know about trend in our country, and that should be actually a thing that should be looking at in other countries.
Yeah. Anything to add there, Boom?
I think for Thailand, it's like, you know, like look at the Philippines, it's not family-based, and exploitation online can be varies between, you know, like boys and girls. Even, you know, for the girls, it's more, you know, like commercial or more job promises or money, you know, promise of getting money when they were exploited online. When boys is more, you know, like I mentioned in my presentation, they were on more like sexual drive. And then after that, they found that, you know, like it's called online sextortion, but it's different, you know, like the law is also different. Like in the States, it's these type of crimes were not charged under human trafficking law. Why Thailand, you know, I don't know about, you know, like Philippines and Cambodia. In Thailand, you know, you know, like these type of crime can also be charged under human trafficking law in Thailand. So it's, yeah, so it's different. But what we've seen that the rise is in for, you know, the offender, like it's more to make, you know, like economic exploitation. That's to make money, to be able to have access to child pornography so they can make money from those.
Yeah. Okay. One quick question. Do any of you know of any organizations working on this topic in Indonesia? Okay. That's fine. That was a question that just popped up in the chat. All right, we're gonna wrap up here. We've been going, what, 35, 40 minutes almost or so. I'm gonna give you guys a chance to have one last word, anything that you really wanted to say in this presentation that you haven't been able to say yet. We'll give you guys the last word, but I'm gonna let ladies go first with Boom, and then we'll go to Boom and Sila and then Sam. Any points that you want to make that you haven't been able to yet?
Yeah, I think something that, you know, for us, I think many of us here, you know, like NGO, I think our job is to, you know, educate more and more about the crimes. You know, it's something like I wouldn't call myself an expert or something, because it's something you have to learn, and it's something you can't combat by yourself. You need partner organizations, you need law enforcement as a duty bearer. And I think my encourage is, you know, for us as an NGO, that we work and support law enforcement and don't take the job from the government, you know, but encourage the government social worker, encourage the government law enforcement to be the one to take the ownership of the work. You know, many times I've seen the struggle as, you know, I see many organizations jump in to try assist the victims, sometimes help even remove or, you know, like the, how you say, like evidence online. But when the victim needs help for the justice to be served, but the evidence already been erased. So, you know, it's very important that if we want to learn and work in this area, is to, you know, and to learn more and to be careful and to consult, you know, the specialized law enforcement in this area, so that, you know, sometimes what we're trying to help may be the obstacle of justice instead. So that's why I want to encourage us, you know, at the end of the day, is to work with our government, social worker, and to, you know, and law enforcement.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Sela.
So I like to emphasize the fact that Osec is a global issue. So international cooperation is key, and we should be able to work together. And I would encourage all the countries that are being affected by Osec should start working together. I think we can become stronger together when we're working together. That's my key recommendation. Also, when it comes to the criminal justice system, you know, whatever legislation you have, legal procedure you practice, it is very important for the criminal justice sector to focus on victim. So a victim-focused approach is also very important, especially when trying to prosecute the crimes of Osec and support the victim who are participating throughout the process. And also it's important again for private sectors, industries and community themselves to also cooperate and support each other. So actually community have to be educated and join force to report abuse. Industry should be able to prevent abuse in their platform and takes action when reports are being directed to their companies. And law enforcement should be able to work really effectively with companies and industry as well when it comes to, of course, enforcing law or collecting evidence for prosecution. Thanks.
Yep, great. All right, Sam, you have the last word.
Thank you, Catherine. It's really been a great pleasure for me to be able to join this conference and share the work of our partners in the government and, of course, our team, the various stakeholders in the Philippines. It's really a great joy to be able to share. Clearly, this is a very dark, difficult issue, and sometimes it gets, you know, overwhelming, and it feels like too heavy for us that it can immobilize us. You know, just seeing, you know, young children being abused and exploited online, moms, you know, perpetrating that. There are sexual offenders across the globe. How can you address that? But working on cases and working with various stakeholders and partners, local communities, people's organizations, there is so much hope. We can fight Osec, and that for me is such an encouragement because even in the Philippines, we're rescuing victims and arresting perpetrators amid the lockdowns, even in the most difficult of situations. And that is such a great encouragement for me. And there are various things happening in terms of, again, awareness raising in social media platforms, media, local communities on the ground, churches, even issuing, you know, pastoral letters, raising awareness about this issue. So for me, I do think that there is a solution, and we are, as a community, are providing, you know, this solution to address Osec, and that is such a great hope, especially even just, you know, hearing stories of survivors, you know, really living in true freedom from darkness to light, and that for me is an excellent story in this Osec issue, that we will be able to end Osec in our lifetime.
That's right. Well, if we didn't believe we could make a difference, we wouldn't be in this at all. And it's so encouraging, even in the pandemic times, that you've had these successes when it's so hard. So that's great. So, wow, thank you. This was a good panel, great discussion. And thank you, audience, for your questions, for your comments. I can see I've been keeping track. You have been answering each other's questions as we've been discussing, and I hope that, Joseph, you're listening somewhere. I hope that all that chat can be copied somewhere and the information won't be lost. I'm sure you'll figure out how to do that. So I'll conclude this Q&A session, and we'll connect on the app or in the next talk or whatever's going on next. So, all right. Thank you, all of you. Have a great day, and kitung mak, kitung Thai mak mak. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.